Hi, I'm Allison. Welcome to Dream Chasers Adventures in Happiness, where my band of superhero guests and I share with you tales of daring do, life-changing journeys towards living our best lives. If you're after an injection of inspiration and ideas to live the life that you want and deserve, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Hi there, and welcome to the show where we serve up conversation, concepts and belief that it is entirely possible to create what you crave. If there's something stopping you from pursuing happiness, whatever that looks like to you from a career or lifestyle point of view, the stories and insights covered here are designed to help. Now today I am joined by my old work colleague and friend 𝗧𝗛 Allison. 𝗧𝗛 has had a very rich and varied career, working for global companies to charities and startups, mostly in the technology and environmental sectors. But after experiencing serious health burnout, 𝗧𝗛 has redefined the way she lives and works, and has forged her own incredible path, one that sees her living half the year in the UK and the other half in India, and mixing corporate consultancy work with holistic healing work through Shiatsu and Qigong. Today, we're going to talk about what drove 𝗧𝗛's burnout and what it taught her about what she needed and wanted, her portfolio career and how she makes that work, and how she's found the courage to follow her own path despite negative social connotations that she's living a little bit like a hippie. So without further ado, welcome to the show, 𝗧𝗛.
Thank you, Alison. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant to have you on. So can we start with what you were originally doing that led to the burnout you experienced? Because burnout is something I think a lot of people either feel very much on the edge of or are suffering from and trying to manage. So what caused it for you? What were you doing from a work or lifestyle point of view that really impacted on your health?
So for me, it was a real mix of things, and I thought I would be the last person to experience burnout. I'm really active. I have many interests. I work hard, play hard, and I've been doing that since I came to London in my mid-20s. And then I was in my dream job. I was working in solar. I finally found myself in the environmental space, and I was managing PR all across the UK, Africa and Latin America, and I set the role up that in a way that suited me, and of course achieved the company's objectives. So I was really happy in my role, and it certainly wasn't just work. I suppose it was, as I said, it was a whole mixture of things. It's perhaps not always eating regularly, not eating the right foods, drinking a bit too much on the weekends. It's just all too fast and not enough downtime. But that is the London lifestyle. It's frenetic, it's fast, it's fun. And who wants to slow down when you're in your mid-30s and having a great time and, as busy in work as you are out, and then pursuing all the many things that I'm interested in as well. So it really sort of came out of the blue, and it also, I think, contrary to popular opinion, it's a series of events. It's not necessarily something that leads up to just one big thing. So it was actually unfolding for about 2 years, and it would manifest as coming back from the pub after just a couple of hours meet up and feeling really, really drained, constantly feeling like I can never get the sleep that I need. I never felt well rested. No matter how many healthy foods I ate, it didn't help. I was doing lots of yoga, that didn't help. I constantly felt depleted. And then, of course, when you're not getting the sleep that you need and you're not focused enough, then the brain fog sets in. Then you start mixing up calendar invites and forgetting meetups with friends, or everything becomes harder, and you start dropping some balls. And that was also very unusual for me to appear to be disorganized. So it was a series of things in a life that was otherwise very full, and I was loving everything that I was doing, but the warning signs were there for sure.
So you were basically running at life, running at work, running at life, filling it, not really recharging and refueling, then and over a period of time that started to have quite an impact.
Exactly, yeah. It's just sort of got worse and worse. And then I very suddenly ended a contract that I've been working in the corporate space, which of course felt like a curse at the time, but was actually a blessing. And it gave me the summer of 2019 to slow down a bit and to complete the third year of my Shiatsu studies. And it was, I needed to. Sometimes life will make you stop, whether you want to or not. So it was a precarious time financially. I had two mortgages to pay, and I had no option though than to slow down and just focus on one thing. I was also working in a charity at the time, giving shiatsu to people with substance misuse problems. So that was my Fridays, and I realised in the end that had to stop. So there was a sort of gradual pulling back of, stripping away of things in line with my energy levels. So for me, burnout looked like having to sleep in my spare bedroom that was completely white. I was actually just sleeping on a mattress on the floor. It was the room where I used to give my holistic treatments. So it was a very calm, peaceful space. But I couldn't have any clutter around me. No television. It was too stimulating. Very rarely any music. And this would sort of come and go. So there'd be the odd weekend where I would make it out with friends. But then the weekdays, it would be really hard to get out of bed. I'm usually an early riser. And also the idea of being around people was incredibly draining. So it's a double-edged sword if I need to be on my own, but then I'm getting more lonely and and then I want to go out and see people, but that's too draining. Then you're back to being on your own. So that really unfolded throughout the rest of 2019.
Wow. So I think what the picture you're painting, I think it's probably from a busyness point of view, a lot of people can probably resonate with running at things and kind of getting to a stage where you just can't catch up with yourself. But it sounds like it really took an incredible toll in the end, and you were forced into having to lie down and be quiet, and that. So you said that was sort of 2019. Just for listeners, the shiatsu that you were learning, you sort of came to that. Am I right in thinking that was around 2016?
It was, yeah, and it was completely by accident. But of course, I don't think it was an accident, and I very much think that I was guided to it. I was queuing for a yoga class in a little studio 2 minutes from my house in South London, and I saw a flyer for shiatsu, and I'd never really heard of it before. Didn't know too much about it. I'm from a Reiki background. I've been practicing Reiki since I was 17, either receiving it or actually giving it. So didn't know too much, but tried it and it just blew me away. Tried it again 2 weeks later. The same thing happened, just all these unusual sensations and strange experiences. And then I signed up 2 weeks later to study it for 3 years. And the school was 5 minutes in the other direction from my house. So there were people
meant to be.
Yeah, it really was. And it was, it's a really good school. And this was the London branch. It's all over the country. There were people that commuted over from the continent once a month for our weekend trainings. So, it's quite sought after, and it's a really good school.
Yeah.
And it was just so close to my home.
So, and just again, for anybody who doesn't know what shiatsu is, from what I understand, it's like a non-invasive therapy that originates from Japan that's based on the meridian system in the body, where you kind of you're pressing and rotating the body to kind of encourage energy or chi to move.
Yeah.
That sort of with the aim of reducing tension and re-energizing the body and kind of supporting energetic and soul healing. Stuff that shifts trauma and shock and stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, wow, what a good explanation. Yeah, most people think, oh, is that shiatsu? Is that a dog? Or, oh, is that a vegan breakfast? No, it's a form of energy healing. Shiatsu itself translates as finger pressure. So I'm using my palms and my thumbs to move people around. And as you say, to get their energy moving. And it's got a strong sort of emotional and spiritual element to it as well, and every practitioner is.
So you had been studying this. You'd been studying this and got qualified in it, and then as you were still going through this kind of incredible burnout phase. So when you hit the point with the burnout, when you hit the point of no return, what kind of changes did you start to make over time to the way that you were living and working in order to heal or cope with the fact that you'd hit that complete health breakdown?
Mm. Yeah, it's a good question. Well, as I said, I started stripping things back. So I started saying no to social appointments. I stopped drinking alcohol. I really looked at all the toxins that I was taking in. I tried to spend more time out of London. I needed downtime and countryside and walking around on the grass. We were being taught Qigong as part of our Shiatsu training as a way to fill yourself up, because when you're working on other people, you're giving out a lot of your own energy. A lot of Shiatsu practitioners will have a secondary practice, a secondary modality to fill themselves up, so you can cultivate your own energy. So I was doing more Qigong actually in my own time, just following videos, and it just took me away, and that helped fill me up a lot. And I think Chinese medicine gave me a lot of reassurance because it has the language for stuff like depletion and burnout. It's associated with the kidney organ, like organ as in Chinese medicine organ, and it speaks of the spirit associated with the kidney is the will, or your impetus to do things. So as with any addiction, overdoing something leads to problems and imbalance and dis-ease.
Right.
So
Okay.
You can understand burnout as a form of overwork. So if you're overdoing, if you're overworking, you're overextending yourself, then imbalance sets in, and then you need to make some changes to redress the balance.
Yeah. Okay, so you were learning this stuff through your holistic work. From a practical work point of view, so you'd obviously you've been working in corporate up until 2019, and I know that then through this period you were being drawn to India. Can you talk a little bit about that and a kind of what happened?
Yeah, of course. I will. Goa kept coming up again and again in conversation, or I turn on the television. There were just a lot of signs. I spoke to a friend who'd been. It just kept coming up in my thoughts all the time. And then I was walking down Brixton High Street, and a car number plate ending in GOA sped past. And I wish I'd taken a photo of it, because it did pull up at the lights. And then I thought, I should really acknowledge that. But anyway, that really sealed the deal. And 6 weeks later, I'd packed up my flat, I'd rented it, and I was flying out to India. And actually, I flew out on the day that we Brexited, January 31st, 2020, because I'd really had enough of all the politics as well, and I was just really ready for a change. So it was partly that I was being pulled by India, but a lot of it was push. It was knowing that I needed to go and I needed to make a change. So as much as people say, wow, you're so brave to just get up and go, not really. I was just totally ready for a change. So I think sometimes you get to that point of tension where, although there's resistance and like, oh God, what if it doesn't work out? And I don't know, what if it turns out to be a big mistake? You just get to a point where you have to give it a go. And what's the worst that could have happened? I went to India, I didn't like it. You can fly back 2 weeks later. For me, it didn't really seem like a risk. It was a way out, and it needed to happen.
And were you planning on it as a kind of just general break, like extended holiday, take time out? Were you planning on working while you were there? Like, what was how were you approaching it?
Yeah, I knew that I didn't want to have a plan, and I didn't have the energy to make one. I managed to get enough energy together to pack everything and go, but beyond that, I didn't have the energy to imagine anything, which is kind of contrary to how I live, because when I was traveling in 2017, I saw a sign that said, don't let your life be the product of a lack of imagination. And it always stuck with me. So, but at this point, I didn't have the energy to see anything other than I just need to get myself to India. Of course, I wanted to share the Shiatsu. I was qualified by this point. I really wanted to share what I'd learned. And that's exactly what happened. Within a month of landing, I'd set up in a beautiful boutique resort, meters from the beach in South Goa. I was giving Reiki with my toes in the sand and the sun and monkeys leaping around. And I was giving Shiatsu in a beautiful shala with the most gorgeous wooden floor. And actually, in our final training weekend, we did a really deep visualization where the teacher led us through imagining what our practice might look and feel like. And I realized that the space that I'd landed in South Goa was pretty much exactly what I'd imagined in my visualization.
Wow.
And that, certainly at that point in July 2019, I had no real interest or thought that I would be going anywhere. I definitely wasn't imagining
Wow.
India. So
No.
yeah, it all 6 months later, it all materialized.
It all materialised, and
Yeah.
I know that. So you obviously you went to India with no real plan, and then not long after that, COVID hit.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, having
Just
no
to throw a
plan,
curveball in.
yes, quite a big spanner. But I had no plan. So it served me really well because I wasn't disappointed. I wasn't thinking, oh, well, I can't go and do this thing now. It was more a case of, oh, okay, well, I can stay or I can go. And I was pressured to come home, did buy a repatriation flight, got put on a plane, and then emailed the Home Office the next day, the Foreign Office, and said, actually, sorry, I don't want to leave. I'm not ready to leave. And actually, at the time, I couldn't. I had no way to get from the airport out to the countryside. And my dad being delicate since his health problems, I had no way to get. So I needed more time. Then a week later, they put me on another flight. And I said, no, actually, I'm not leaving. Can you take me off and give me a refund? And they did. So I was determined to stay, and it was a sliding doors moment, really. And the next 2 or 3 years of my life would have been really different if I had left. But as it was, I felt really safe.
Yeah.
I was in a small community with loads of people all thrown together from all over the world. It was just a crazy social experiment, and I felt safe and happy. My landlady's son was a policeman, so although sourcing food was a bit problematic at times, he was bringing us supplies from the local city, and I was living in paradise. And also, importantly, my health was really improving. My health improved rapidly as soon as I landed.
Wow. And therein lies the lesson, isn't it? So you get there, these things happen, you didn't have a plan, you just followed your instinct, and you ended up staying for 2.5 years, is that right?
Yes, yeah. And I was very fortunate to travel all over India in 2021. I went to see bits of India that you'd never usually see, so empty, like Pushkar and some really rural bits of Rajasthan. Just travelled around all over, like flying by train. Took the train all the way through Rajasthan and went right up to the Pakistan border, and then flew up to Ladakh, went out west, and again got right up to the Pakistan border and couldn't go any further. So it was just a really good wander, and exactly
incredible experience.
Cultural immersion, but also just complete freedom, and the sort of antidote that I really needed to 15 years of working in London.
Yeah. So from that point, when you came back, from that point, how have you structured your work? Because you're now doing 2 different types of work. So you have your holistic work with the shiatsu that you're doing and you're building out, but you also have your corporate consulting work. So can you talk a little bit about how you manage that, both practically and financially? How do you make this portfolio career that lots of people talk about as a dream, and also living between 2 different countries? Because I know you spend 6 months here and 6 months in India, continue to switch. Can you just explain a little bit about what it looks like and how it works?
Yeah, sure. So I fly out to India in generally about November. I have an apartment out there and a moped, so a lot of my stuff is already there. And I'm there till about May, but I mean, it's all flexible. It can all change. And this is all just evolved very organically since being there for so long, the pandemic. I never had a thought as such that, I could set up half of my life here and half in another country. So it's sort of come about by circumstance, but I could easily also decide, actually, I don't want to go to India anymore. I'm just going to live in the UK. But it just feels right for now. And I think that's the other thing about when we want to make big changes, that they don't have to be marriage decisions. It's like, just give this a go. It feels right for now, but it can absolutely change. And part of what makes it work is that, as you say, financially, it's possible. With renting out my properties in the UK, in London, and being able to live very affordably when I'm in India. I can eat out every day, and my rent, petrol's very affordable. I can live on about £700 a month.
Wow.
Some people live on far less, some people live on more, but I don't drink, and I seem to be able to get by on about £700 a month. So in the winter months, when I'm working and living cheap, I manage to save quite a bit of money. So then that pays for my UK lifestyle. When I come back for summers, I'm currently renovating a cottage, a 19th century cottage in the country. And there, of course, money is tight sometimes, and I've had to be careful, but then other times things flow. So it's definitely sort of, you've got to take the highs and the lows, and yeah, it's not always easy, but it works. You can make it work.
Yeah. And what kind of what sort of work are you doing from a corporate point of view, just so that listeners understand kind of the type of work that you do? So when you're not doing the holistic work, what are you doing corporately? Yeah,
so when I was working in corporate PR for 15 years, a lot of my role involved writing. So I write for pleasure, and yeah, a lot of the corporate work I do now is focused on writing. So at the moment, I've been working with a big legal consulting company headquartered in Chicago. So they've got a disparate team. So I'm speaking with people all over the world, sometimes data engineers, digital transformation specialists, innovation team, people who are really smart and love their jobs, and I'm speaking with them at the moment and creating new content for the website. So I get to hear about their roles, but I also get to hear about who they are as people and hear their ideas and what makes them tick, and then I turn it into a good story. So I'm still using my storytelling skills from PR world, using my writing, which is for me is a very intuitive process. As much as I'm working on a piece of content and formulating sentences and always looking for the right words and trying to find a sense of flow, it's the same kind of intuitive process really as to when I put my hands on someone. When I'm doing shiatsu, it's very similar. It's 1 minute you're focused, you're really intrigued by a certain area, and then then you go into an aware state. So I'm constantly switching between focused and aware. So really sort of detailed and then very expanded, and using all of my senses really.
Do you know what I love about this is that you are absolutely proving that it is possible to mix spiritual and corporate worlds, and that you're proving that they can coexist. And and the way that you're doing it is very grounded in practical terms. So you're making enough money to live on. You are a self-made woman. I know that you've got property in London that you invested in years ago, and that you're using to rent out when you're not in the UK, and you're living really cheaply, as you said, when you're in India. But you're proving that. And actually, there is a crossover between the spiritual and the corporate to some extent in the way that you approach the work that you do. So it sounds like it's very aligned to who you are and how you operate.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I've really created it in a way that works for me. And I think my previous health issues have really forced that. There's no other way than to set things up in a way that works for me. If I force myself to sit at a laptop for 8 hours a day after day, my body will quickly tell me, no, you're not doing this. So it wouldn't make me happy anyway, and it wouldn't be making the best use of my skills. And we're all intuitive beings. We've got a whole range of senses that we can use if we choose to. We're not limited to 5 senses, and I've set myself up in a way that utilizes all of those abilities, and actually that sort of more spiritual part of my work is massively unfolding even more at the moment. So yeah, I've found a balance that works, and I don't believe unfortunately the spiritual side of life is massively smeared, and many of my interests have always been massively smeared. So, I really like walking around outside on the grass. Oh, you're such a hippie. Oh, I really love being outside in the sunshine on the beach and in salt water. It makes me feel really good. Oh, you're such a hippie. Really, am I? Or am I just following what makes me feel really good and keeps me healthy, and actually applies to most people? Being outdoors, being amongst the trees, it makes you feel good. Being in direct sunlight, it's very healing. So
well, actually, it's all proven. There's science behind all of it. Whether you look at forest bathing that came out of Japan, and the fact that being around trees actually physiologically affects your body and feels good, or being in nature, it's the same thing. And I think with the lives that we lead and this constant busyness and always on lifestyle that we're all peddled and that it's very easy to get absorbed in, it just doesn't serve us. It doesn't feel good. I don't think it feels good for anybody.
No,
if we were honest, but it's just become the way that we live. And so the idea of living differently, like you are, is, gets labelled, hippie or spiritual or kind of weirdly alternative.
Yes.
But everything you're describing is really, like, to me, from an outside perspective, it's very practical and actually just very honest. You're very aligned. You're living in the way that works for you. Regardless of what the mainstream might think or say, you're just pursuing what feels good.
What feels good, yeah. And of course, I think whenever you strike out on a different path or try and attempt to do something a bit different, there will be people that won't like that you're going to do something different. And unfortunately, you get some negative comments. Oh, you're just bumming around on the beach, or people who don't like they don't like people having a level of success and people who achieve a level of success in a way that they aren't. So if you want to just be tied to a desk in the 9 to 5, and if that works for you, that's absolutely fine. But it didn't work for me, and so this is how I'm managing things. I need free space. I need headspace and free time and flexibility in my diary. So if I want to go and support my dad, who's a primary carer for my mum, who's got advanced dementia, I can go and spend time with him or them, and I can take my dad out to the garden centre for lunch. I can go and spend time with my elderly godmother or any other family members. It's not they don't have to book me a week ahead if they want some time. I need that flexibility. And also when I'm walking around in the countryside, I've got the South Downs on my doorstep. It's when I clear my head and I have a lot of new ideas that come in. But if I don't have that blank space, then the ideas and the creativity doesn't come. And if I'm writing, then I need to be able to, like an Etch-a-Sketch, I need to be able to wipe things out and then to create new pictures as well.
Yeah, I absolutely understand that. The need for kind of, for me it's silence, like, and it's being in nature. It does the same thing. Like I get downloads of ideas and that wouldn't come if I'm sitting at my desk trying to come up with them. It just doesn't work. No. But if I'm off hiking up a mountain or walking on a beach at the crack of dawn, and just being, that's when all my best ideas come.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there's a need to acknowledge that we are spiritual beings. You have a soul, and whatever you want to think about that, and whatever language you're most comfortable with, you can choose what works for you. But it also
there's that quote. Oh, sorry, it just reminded me of that. I can't remember who it was, who it came from, but somebody was quoted as saying, "You are a human being, not a human doing." Which really stuck with me years ago. I was like, yeah. So can we finish off with any advice you might have for other people based on your own life's learnings and learnings from work and the way in which you live? Do you have any advice for anybody else who might be feeling something like you were back in 2019?
Yeah, firstly, to really figure out a way to listen to yourself and to know, oh, this feels good and this doesn't. I think when you've got a lot going on and you're perhaps not used to tuning into your body, or not particularly embodied because we're generally in our heads, once you can really get a sense of what feels right, you can let it guide you, and you can really learn to trust your instincts, which I know can feel really daunting when you want to go away from the mainstream or do something different that feels really wild. But if it feels like the right thing to do, you could just follow your instincts, and also to get so focused on it that no matter what other people are saying, that you still stick to what is right for you. I was told to come home, really instructed to come home from India, and I knew it wasn't the right thing for me. Secondly, the point that I'd like to make would be around playing the long game. So I knew I always wanted to work in the environmental space, but it was 5 years into my career that I actually had that opportunity. And then I really wanted to do more on health and understand how my body actually works. And suddenly I found myself training in Shiatsu. And then I knew that I needed to make a change. I wanted to leave London for a long time and found myself in India. So these are sort of decisions that have they've always been there, but it just took a while for them to come about. Equally, when you're building up a practice as I am now in the countryside and sort of starting again with a new client list and building my holistic business again, it takes time. So it's great to have lots of ideas, but it's also knowing which ones to pursue. And there are some other ones that I'm still pursuing now. For example, Practitioner's Garden, which is to support people who've just learned some kind of holistic skill. It's to help them set up a business. I see loads of people learning things and then not practicing them and not sharing them, but people really need to be experiencing these skills. And that's been running in the background for about 2 years. At the moment, I'm just writing stories and posting them to Substack and getting a feel for exactly how I want to help people. So ideas can sort of bubble away in the background for some time. And it takes a while for things to materialise, but somehow things will materialise exactly when they're meant to.
That's a great point about time, because, I think we've all read many stories that the supposed sort of meteoric rises to fame of people in, and fame and fortune in all sorts of areas. And the truth is that isn't what happens. There is always a hero saga that sits beneath, usually, and typically, if anything, if you really want something and it's a sizable change in anything, it's going to take some time. That's just the reality. So I love that. That's brilliant.
It will, and then also, can I add one more point?
Yeah, of course you can.
It's that when you're on the right path, you will know, because there'll be a sense of flow. And things will just start to click into place. So it might take a while for things to click, but they will suddenly click. But also, things can happen quite fast. So it was finding work within a month of landing in India. I was just flowing. It was just everything was working. And I found the job in the most beautiful resort, and it just flowed. And then when the pandemic happened and threw that curveball, I just pivoted and worked on people at my home instead, on a veranda on the edge of a breezy bay. So even when things send you sideways, they're often pointing you to something even better. Yeah, the final learning is really around taking care of your health. So one of the things that catalysed me in a big way to make some radical changes was the fact that when my dad retired, he was hit with bowel cancer. And there were 2 other senior men in the company that I was working for at the time who were also young, fit, very healthy men who had life-threatening illnesses all of a sudden. They were all very entrepreneurial people who, on the surface of it, were very good at handling a high level of stress, just like my dad. And they chose to make some big life changes as well, and to manage their diseases, and that happily they both recovered, and amazingly so did my dad. He recovered because he had always taken good care of his health, and that really helped when he had the chemo and keyhole surgery. So that was a really big wake-up call, really, to the way that I manage stress too. And for sure, anyone experiencing stress, when you're overloaded and it becomes too much, there are going to be negative consequences. So it's people who even seem very, very good at looking after themselves and very capable and very intelligent, like very A1 people, they unfortunately also experience challenges. So it was a big wake-up call for me.
Yeah, that's a great message, because I think it's the sustained level of stress that ends up causing disease in the body inevitably, even if on the surface. And I was very much like this myself years ago, thinking I was dealing with stress extraordinarily well, and except that it had all sorts of physical consequences for me. So I think that's a great message to end on. Brilliant. It's been totally fabulous having you on the show, and thanks so much for giving us an insight into the way that you live and work, and how you've listened to yourself and made a portfolio career in 2 different countries a viable choice. If anyone is interested in connecting with you to either learn more about your Shiatsu and Qigong work or your corporate work, where can they get hold of you?
Yeah, it's at energymoves.one, and Practitioner's Garden you can just search for on Substack, and otherwise just find me on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. I'll put all of your details into the show notes. So again, thanks ever so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Oh, thanks, Allison.
That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us, and I really hope that Sarah's story has provided some food for thought, particularly if you are struggling with the way that you are living or working, or you're experiencing a similar kind of burnout. As Sarah has shown, it really is possible to do things a different way, if that's what you need and want. So if you know anyone who would benefit from listening to this conversation and Sarah's experience and approach, please do share this episode. And until next time, just know that I believe in you and your ability to create the change you really want. So go do your thing.
Thank you for listening today. I hope our time together has got you thinking about your own adventure in happiness. So please do get in touch. I'd love to hear more about your story. And why not join our Dream Chasers Unite community? There is nothing better than an adventure shared. Until next time, be brave and go create what you crave.